prospects that will potentially be on the rise in the system. And I know the name you see on the screen right now, Izaac Pacheco, seems a little unfair for Tiger prospect heads or whatever terminology you want to use for it. But the reason why we wanted to start with, well, Izaac Pacheco is one of them, but we'll have a few names here coming up shortly. But the reason why we started with Izaac Pacheco is because Jim Whelan spoke about him today,
You were
Chris.
saying the other day that you think the Tigers' young players within the system are a little bit better than a lot of people have given them credit for. Why do you think that?
Well, I think Colt Keith, I think, is a good-looking hitter. Pacheco's a good, big, strong, young left-handed-looking hitter. This cover's not near as bare as a lot of people think it is. So I think that those guys, it's big years for those guys. And, ideally you like to get to where your club's good and you can break one guy in each year. That would be the perfect scenario. That's when you know you're rolling pretty good. So, I can vision, Green Meadows in the outfield, in the big leagues. That's pretty impressive. And Colt Keith, that's 3 left-handed bats along with Pacheco that could come. They're all power bats potentially. So that's pretty impressive.
That's a good thing because Jim Whelan is the guy who, for a lot of people who may not know, he was a manager for guys like Alan Trammell, Lance Parrish, Lou Whitaker. He was a minor league manager for a lot of the core of the 1984 World Series team. So that being said, you can trust that Jim Whelan's talent evaluation is pretty good.
Yeah, and he works for the Tigers, but he said some things that we've been saying all along. He said that the system isn't nearly as bad as some people think it is, and he singled out Parker Meadows, Colt Keith, and Izaac Pacheco as guys who could be very legit, which we've done a lot ourselves. So that was some nice confirmation from us. But yeah, I think we're going to talk about some breakout players, and Pacheco isn't. He was a supplemental first round pick, so he's not a nobody, right? Or maybe technically a second rounder. I don't remember, but yeah, he's a guy who could break out in a way that makes him a top 100 prospect at the end of next season because of his power potential. And what we saw was a pretty advanced feel for hitting last year and a more athletic defender than I expected. So there's a lot of things to like there. Basically, this year he just needs to kind of produce the way we saw Colt Keith produce last year in his first couple months. Put up 10 home runs in his first 2 months in West Michigan. And I think people are going to start taking notice.
Yeah, and the one thing that we noticed last year, and this is a game against Lansing we were at, that Pacheco already had a kind of advanced feel at the plate. He, for a guy who was just 19 years old when he got called up, was able to come in a situation, and this was the same day that Chase Young also debuted. That I think he took a little bit of that thunder, and here's the opposite field of home run I was talking about right there at the end of it. If you notice the swing, how I almost just caught he barely, like if you look at the way he did that, Chris, that swing was just like I don't want to say barely swung it, but it was just kind of like it did almost like an afterthought. But that's the kind of power potential he has. But he really showed really good patience at the plate right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy who's going to have some swing and miss, maybe in the zone a little bit, maybe above the zone. But he also he doesn't expand a ton, and he does seem to have a plan out there. And we saw him have like a legitimate 2-strike approach. I don't know if it was this game, it was a different game where he waited back on a curveball and just kind of served it to left center, which is just something you don't see a lot from young hitters. So yeah, there's a lot to like there. He's going to go through some growing pains, but he's definitely a really nice breakout candidate for the Tigers this year. He's the sort of, like I said, he's the sort of guy who could find himself in the top 100 prospect list by the end of the year.
Yeah, and for his size too, for being 19 years old, and again, just the fact that he has came a long way from Lakeland, where he struggled in the field originally, but then it was like a completely different player. He started getting more comfortable, and the buzz around him in the draft, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the fact that he had too big of a swing, correct?
Yeah, he's a big dude with long levers, and there's some length to the swing, and he struck out a lot in his first pro season after the draft down there in the Complex League, but he kept the strikeout rate in check last year. And really, he seemed to take in pro instruction really well. And, you mentioned him being big or whatever, but he's got plenty of room to grow still, and he can already put a charge into the ball. I was at another game where he hit a 450-foot home run to the pull field. It was an absolute bomb for a 19-year-old. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential there. Just need to, like I said, sometimes the breakout comes before the stats. Sometimes you need the stats for people to wake up.
Yeah, and that's where you're going to be kind of taken seriously if they look at a stat line like similar to Cole Keith last year, who had a WRC plus of 123 before his season-ending injury and was hitting everything. Then yeah, you're going to get some attention, and definitely will be the case if he starts the season pretty well. West Michigan's going to be a fun team to watch this year, especially if Santana and Campos are part of the equation.